I was in a motor vehicle accident. I got rear-ended when I was probably about 5 years old, but I actually suffered a pretty bad whiplash injury back then. I was in pain for so long. For 7 years of my life, I didn't realize I'd forgotten what it was like to not be in pain anymore. Because I think the universe speaks to us for a reason, right? And it spoke to me at a very early age. Because if that didn't happen to me, I would have never found this desire to help people like that.
Dr. C, chiropractor and owner of Discover Chiropractic, reveals his journey to uncovering his true passion for health and wellness. He explores the emotional triggers behind overeating and challenges the lifestyle choices that keep us from feeling our best. He poses a powerful question: why do so many people struggle to feel good in their bodies?
And here in the United States, we're almost indoctrinated to work 40, 50-hour weeks, and we almost live to work. We're surrounded by really unhealthy choices like sedentary jobs, right? We spend most of our times on devices like this or on laptops and computers that are terrible for us, for our brain, for our backs, for everything. Lifestyles are killing us, essentially.
Well, let me ask you, Dr. C, for someone that's hearing this and is like, I don't know what to do. What's my next step? Like, I can't find just a job that's remote and stand all the time. What is your advice? What are your tips?
I disagree with that. I think most people know.
Welcome to Motivation Monday. We are here with Dr. C from Discover Chiropractic. I am so excited for this video. I'm so excited for this podcast. I feel like you have so much to teach us, and I'm just excited to learn. So would you like to kind of start us off with how you got into being a chiropractor?
Being a chiropractor. Well, it was a long story. The short end of it was really I was hurt when I was a kid. I was in a motor vehicle accident. I got rear-ended when we were about, what year was it? I was probably about 5 years old. And, back then, our healthcare system was a lot different. And so we went to the ER and, they said everything was fine because they're looking for major things like major injury, was everything broken, dislocated, things like that. And so as far as they could tell, everything was safe. And it was good. But I actually suffered a pretty bad whiplash injury back then. At least that's what we suspect. Because everything was fine for a long time. Then as I was growing up, like a lot of kids, I started getting active in sports. And I got better and better at it. And then, of course, with activity, aches and pains always set on, right? So things that I thought they were just kind of normal at the time. But as I got older, things got worse. And I was probably my freshman year in high school, and I remember I was in such severe shape at that point. Like I couldn't run for more than just a couple minutes without being in severe pain. And I'm talking about like my feet, my back, everything. And we didn't know what it was. And so my mom had already taken me to every doctor and physician you could think of, and the physical therapist and so forth. I remember my trainer in, I think it was 8th grade. He mentioned, hey, your feet are flat. I was like, I don't even know what that means. Okay, what do I do about that? It's like, go see a podiatrist. So we saw a podiatrist. They put me in these insoles. They're supposed to support my arches, right? It says, this will make everything better. And it didn't. It got worse. So I remember my freshman year in high school, I loved track. I ran a lot. I was a sprinter and a long jump, and I loved it. I thought I was going to be able to compete all through high school, and I just struggled so much my freshman year. It was the first year that I ever competed where I wasn't making any gains, and it was heartbreaking. And so I remember sitting at that last track practice. Remember, this is my first year as this high school coach, and I really looked up to him because he was a great coach. And I just couldn't do it anymore. He asked me to come over to play tag with the rest of the team, and I just couldn't even do that. So lo and behold, the next year I show up first week of school. One of my friends asked me why I didn't show up for football practice. I was like, oh my gosh. I didn't show up because I quit track, which means I can't do football. And that means I had to quit baseball and basketball and everything else I loved. So that was it. And being an athlete was a big part of my identity. So I stopped competing sports at that point, and I fell into a big depression by myself. Like no one even knew about it. I was extremely introverted in high school, and I think that probably made things drastically worse. So I graduated high school, and I was like so excited to get out of there, and went to college, and I found myself just kind of lost. Like all my friends growing up, all the people in my classes, they were growing up to be lawyers and doctors, so that's kind of what I was going to do. So I was at the University of Washington. I was studying to do pre-med essentially, and I was ready to go be a medical doctor. And I ran across a chiropractor there, and didn't really know what it was, but he educated me on it, and I went to go see him. And so, have you been to a chiropractor?
I've never for like alignment, but I have seen like a holistic chiropractor more for other things. But.
Well, I don't know what your experience was like. He explained to me what he was going to do, and for those of you listening or watching, that when you've been to a chiropractor for the first time, and talks about he's going to adjust your neck, and he was explaining that to me, right? And I was like, wait a minute, what is that about, right? Because I watched a lot of kung fu movies, watching up, and I was like, that doesn't sound right. But
it's a bit intimidating.
Very intimidating, and it still is for a lot of people. And so I trusted the guy. I was like, I figured, I'm not running anyhow. Like, he's going to cripple me. Great. And so, big deal, right? So I let him adjust me. And he woke up something inside of me that I have not forgotten to this day, because I was so lost at that time. I couldn't figure out what was going on. Like, he adjusted me, and I was just like, went completely silent. I went home, didn't say anything to anybody. I locked myself in my room, wouldn't talk to my roommates. And I kind of just sat in my chair for quite some time. And after a little while, I realized I was actually just feeling better.
It was immediate?
Yeah, pretty quickly.
Huh.
I was in pain for so long. For 7 years of my life, I didn't realize I'd forgotten what it was like to not be in pain anymore. And that experience was just so traumatic for me. And so it took me a long time to really process that. But then I realized that I was actually just feeling better. It wasn't anything unusual. So I kept going to see him. And so I got better. And I think I started running for the first time again for 7 years. And you want to know how far I made it when I ran?
How far?
2 blocks.
Hey, that's a big thing.
I
can't even make a block.
Right? I was so out of breath. And it was embarrassing because I was, I took a lot of pride in my physical health, and I didn't realize like how bad my lungs were after 7 years of not running. So I started running, and I would run at night so no one could see me, right? And then I would put my hood on, and this is at the University of Washington, which is not a safe place to be doing that.
I was going to say, a little scary at night, huh?
Right. But I did. And then my roommate, he was this really tall, lanky soccer player, and he was amazing because, like, soccer players to me just amazed me. Like, they could just sprint for hours. So he would run with me. And one day, we got to the steps of the University of Washington parking lot, and there are stairs there that you can run up. They're so steep that they actually have outdoor escalators for us, right? And so he told me, we're going to go run up these stairs. And I was just like, my heart sank to my stomach, but I was like, I was going to go for it. And he said, we're going to hit every foot and every step, though. So all the way up, right?
I'd say, absolutely not. I will see you later.
Right, exactly. Because I did not grow up being a long-distance runner. I was a sprinter. So, like, these long distances were just foreign to me. But I was trying to keep up with him, and I could tell, like, he was really slowing down so I could keep up. So,
what a good friend, man.
Right?
Yeah, that sounds like a good friend.
He was a great friend. But I closed my eyes, and we ran up the stairs. And the next time when I opened my eyes, I realized I was at the top, and I felt great. I was like on top of the world. It was like I felt like Rocky, And so
insert music here.
That's right. And then I found myself another running buddy, and she helped me train. And the next thing I know, I was running a half marathon. And I walked out of that run thinking, this is absolutely crazy that I'm running this far. Like you would never cut me dead running more than 200 meters, right? I hated the mile. So here I am running a half marathon. I was like, so cool. And so I had a conversation with this chiropractor of mine. I was like, hey, what was this all about? Like, I don't understand this. Like, if I had met you when I was 5 years old, I might have been able to actually run track in high school. I would have missed out on that part of my life. So found out that, the schooling was the same. So instead of going to medical school, I go to chiropractic college. The undergrad college was all the same. The prerequisites were the same. So I packed up my stuff. I moved to California and became a chiropractor. And here I am.
It's interesting. If you had found him at 5 years old, you would have never found your passion for being a chiropractor. So
right.
Obviously it's not ideal, but it worked out its purpose in a sense.
Absolutely. Because I think the universe speaks to us for a reason, right?
Yeah.
And it spoke to me at a very early age. Because if that didn't happen to me, I would have never found this desire to help people like that.
I do want to ask you, how, did it feel mentally? Because here you are feeling this physical pain all your life, and then all of a sudden you kind of had this aha moment, it healed yourself, and then what was your What were you thinking?
It was very euphoric. That's why I think I was so confused at the time. You know, I had dealt with so much trauma my whole life that trying to face that at such a young age still, I didn't really have the ability to cope with it at the time. And so it was very confusing to me. So when I started running again, like, you know, the endorphins are running, like I was feeling great. Really, you know, people who suffer depression, we know from studies that there's no drug in the world that will outperform regular exercise. The brain functions so much better to help fight depression as you're exercising. So when I was exercising it for the first time, I was feeling great and wonderful. Because I'm the type of guy, like, if I'm not exercising regularly, I'm not really nice to be around. You know,
Really?
some of us need more exercise than others. And so for me, I was in a high at that portion of my life. So it felt great.
So this might be a silly question. What is it about exercising that helps us feel better?
Everything.
Because most people come out and they're like, I hated that.
Really?
I feel like I was sweating. I am not doing good. So what is it that makes us feel good?
I would advise people to find a different form of exercise. You know, exercise does not necessarily mean you have to go to the gym, lift weights. That's not all there is to exercise. You know, when we talk about incorporating exercise to a healthy lifestyle, it is about finding ways to incorporate motion into your life. We live a very sedentary lifestyle here in the United States, right? Most of us are spending hours sitting at a desk, doing things over and over and over again. And so incorporating just regular motion into your lifestyle is important. But like when we talk about regular exercise, you can do things that are fun, right? You don't have to go run a marathon.
Yeah.
You can play pickleball if you like that. You can play basketball. You can just walk, take the dog out for a walk, go out with the family, all sorts of ways to really incorporate regular movement into your everyday life.
This is so bad to say, but I, for some reason, have this notion that walking does not do anything and it does not work.
It is so wrong.
I know, because I started walking and I do feel better, and I've seen more results than I have going hard at the gym. You know what I mean? And
Right.
I think it's kind of a low impact exercise, but the mental benefits are extreme.
Yeah. I would tell people that if you can carve out time, join the 5 a.m. club.
What is the 5 a.m. club?
Get
It
up
sounds daunting.
Get up at 5 a.m. before everybody else wakes up, because then you have that time for just you. Hop on the treadmill, go to the gym, do what you want to do for your exercise, because if you get that regular exercise in the morning, it just makes you feel different. The endorphins pump in your brains, which is what makes you feel better. But, you know, your blood's pumping. You look healthier. You feel better. You're just filled with energy for the rest of the day. You just function better. So regular exercise is just so important for most of us.
Why do most people struggle to wake up early?
Oh, that's a loaded question.
Sorry.
It has to do with the fact that we lead a very unhealthy lifestyle here in the United States.
Can you expand on that?
So we've done a lot of studies. Have you heard of the blue zones? You never heard of the blue zones? Okay, so Dan Buettner was a researcher. He wrote a book about this. I think it was about 18 years ago that we really dove into it. But he studied these pockets around the world that he called the blue zones. And what he found was these pockets of people that had a higher prevalence of centenarians, people that live over 100 years old. They didn't die of diseases like heart disease and cancer like we do here in the U.S. And so he called these the blue zones. And what they found out about that is they lived a different lifestyle than us.
And what was that lifestyle?
Well, we've heard these terms about Mediterranean diet. Have you ever heard that?
Yes.
Yeah. So I hear this a lot in my line of work, because everybody says, like, you should do this diet, you go carnivore, you should do this, that. But like, reality is diets don't work. And so one that always comes up that most doctors agree on is the Mediterranean diet. And it's a great diet. I mean, it's healthy, it's balanced. But the reality is, if you actually look at the studies of what they found, it wasn't really about the food. Like, the food was just a part of it. It was really about the lifestyle. We live a different lifestyle. So I got the opportunity to travel to Europe this past year, and it was amazing. I went to Greece. I went to this tiny little island in Greece, and I finally got to see it firsthand. And our lives are different than there. And I may not get the exact times right, so bear with me. But this is what it was like when I was out there. The food was a lot fresher, but they also walked everywhere. They loved what they do. They enjoyed each other's company. They would wake up and open businesses up here in their town at 10 a.m., and we would go there and we'd sit and eat, and no one would be rushed. I sat down at a restaurant there to have brunch, and the waiter never came to check on me because I found out it was just custom to just take your time, and they won't bring you your check until you ask for it. So I sat there for like nearly 2 hours, like waiting what was going on. I was just watching the ocean, and it was amazing. There was just no rush to do things. No one was in a hurry to do everything, right? And so I think about 12 or 1 o'clock, everything shut down. The whole town shut down. People went home. They took naps. They spent time at the beach. They played. They spent time with their friends and family. And I think 5 or 6 o'clock rolls around. They open back that town back up, and they partied through the night and rinse and repeat.
Wow. Sounds like the dream lifestyle.
Correct. And here in the United States, we're almost indoctrinated to work 40, 50-hour weeks, and we almost live to work. We're surrounded by really unhealthy choices like sedentary jobs, right? We spend most of our times on devices like this or on laptops and computers that are terrible for us, for our brain, for our backs, for everything.
I'm like, look at how I'm sitting right now. My back is literally a hunchback because, it is true.
Right? And think about the standard American diet. We call it the SAD diet. The standard American diet is really not healthy for us. In the United States, we consume the great majority of the pharmaceuticals in the world, and we spend billions of dollars on it, and yet our health outcomes are terrible compared to the rest of the free world. So our lifestyles are killing us, essentially.
Well, let me ask you, Dr. C, for someone that's hearing this and is like, I don't know what to do. What's my next step? Like, I can't find just a job that's remote and stand all the time. What is your advice? What are your tips?
I disagree with that. I think most people know. So if I put a donut in front of you and I put a banana in front of you, I think most people understand which one's the healthy choice and which one's not, right?
Yeah.
I don't have to tell you that. What's missing?
Sugar. I want the sugar.
I'll tell you, it's actually back to what you and I talked about before, is making decisions based on our emotions.
Oh.
Right? And convenience. And what else? Taking action. Listen, we know that exercising is healthy for us. I think most of us can agree with that. Now, if we're sitting in a room with people who disagree with the fact that, bananas are healthier than a donut, we're in the wrong room. We can't have a real conversation. But I think most of us have a tendency to understand that if I eat broccoli, that's going to be healthier for me than eating a hamburger, right?
Yeah.
Or I would say fast food. How about that? So it's not really about the knowledge. It's about putting that knowledge into action. And so people struggle with it because we make very emotional decisions when it comes to our health, especially when it comes to food. So why is McDonald's so prevalent, and why is it so successful?
It's quick
and easy. And let's face it, it's cheap, right? Immediate gratification. Do you remember growing up, your parents making you sit at the dinner table until you ate your broccoli?
I have a bad story with that one. Yep, I remember.
Me too. It was traumatic, right?
Is the right word.
So what did we want to eat instead?
McDonald's, literally.
Right? And we know that it's so unhealthy for us. But the reason why, because it makes us feel good immediately.
Yeah.
And it's a very adolescent type of approach to our health. And we carry that all through adulthood. I still see people every single day who they don't want to eat their vegetables. They struggle with exercise. They don't want to do this. They don't want to do that because they want that immediate gratification rather than the results they're looking for. So I see people that come in to see me every single day. They want their health back because they struggle with it, but they don't want to do what it takes to get there because the emotional attachment is so hard to let go of. This is why people are addicted to things like nicotine and alcohol. It is hard to let go of how it makes you feel. And that's where the hard work comes in.
I do notice when I actually happened last week, I was eating good, I was exercising, I felt great on the weekends, and then I had something happen and I was upset, and immediately I go to DQ to get ice cream. I immediately go to Potbelly, get a loaded sandwich, and I was like, it's okay. I feel sad today, so I could allow this,
Right.
And then the next day I feel that guilt, immediate guilt. Like, why did I do that? I know that was the wrong decision and I still didn't eat good. And I think it's also balance, like having a good balance. But I noticed that meal happened because I was sad.
Right.
And I think, well, how do I stop myself from doing that?
We learn how to manage our emotions.
You're like, control yourself.
Not necessarily control yourself. Take charge of yourself. most of us grow up we don't have the skills or the tools necessary to manage our mental health, right? And so we make a lot of emotional decisions still, right? So how do you go about doing that? Well, for one, most of us wait until there's a problem before we go see someone. I would tell you that you don't need to wait until you have a nervous breakdown to go see a psychiatrist. Go see a mental health specialist to be the best version of yourself. And we have all grown up with some sort of trauma that we are dealing with, and we don't know how to manage it ourselves. So there are professional help. There is professional help out there. So go get that, number one. But number two, learning and teaching yourself the tools to help manage through those emotional decisions are really important too. We use one called Stop, Challenge, and Choose. It's a really simple one I teach my patients, right? Dr. Wayne Anderson wrote it in his book called The Habits of Health. And let's just say that you're having a bad day like that, and your goal is to go, actually, you want to live to 100. You want to have a healthy lifestyle, right? And so think about that decision. So it's just, you're having a bad day, and so you have this idea that pops in your brain that you should go get some ice cream because growing up, that used to make you feel so good, brought back all these memories you spent with your parents and your grandparents that were so fond to you, right? And that's why we do those things. We gravitate towards these choices because they're easy and they make us feel good. So what we do is let's just stop for a second. Let's just shut that emotion off for 1 second, and let's just challenge that idea. Now, what would happen if you chose to go have that ice cream? What would you do?
I feel like I'd instantly feel a little better.
Right. And then the next day,
I feel guilt.
all about emotions, right?
Yeah.
So how about if you just, number one, if you did make that choice to have the ice cream, how about you just gave yourself some grace and you didn't feel guilt about it the next day? And knowing that instead of just letting that throw you off for the next meal, for every meal that day, for every meal that week, for every meal that month, and every other meal for the rest of your life, you just get yourself back on track on the next meal and have a healthy meal for the next meal.
Yeah.
That's one way to approach it, right? And what would that look like for you?
I think the next day I'd be eating more protein, more vegetables, trying a little better. Yeah. But I feel like one thing is that awareness. I have to be aware that I'm even doing that. And I feel like most people aren't even aware that they're eating this way or that their emotions are tied to food in general.
Right. So that's why we think about that sort of stuff, right? So think about this, that what did you actually do? Most people, they make those decisions based on their emotions. So they feel guilty about it and they just give up on their New Year's resolution, right?
Yep.
Things like that. And they give up on their health. And that's one way to approach it too. And so what would that look like when you were 65 or 100 years old?
Like if I was following that lifestyle that I did in the past, like fast food all the time because it was convenient, in my 60s, I'd probably be relying on other people for help and not doing it myself. You know?
Right. Does that make sense? So when you think about it, that choice to make those decisions and feel guilty about it, they're not going to get you to where you want to be with your health. So logically, is that really the right choice for you?
Nay.
Okay. So let's not do that. How about another choice? Let's just say that I choose not to have the ice cream. What would happen if I choose not to have that ice cream that day?
Probably want that ice cream. I'm going to be honest. I don't know.
You might, right?
Or I think, binge. Like I would find something else for that sweet tooth. I don't know.
Right. Like what?
Whatever I have in the pantry.
Again, more about your emotions, right?
Yeah.
But instead, if we chose to do something healthier, for me, like one of the things that works really well for me is I like to do good things for people.
Oh. Okay.
It makes me feel good. My endorphins rot.
Oh.
See, my mentor has taught me this over the years and realized that I have this heart and penchant to help people. And so I go out there and do a random good deed. It makes me feel better. And what does that do to me? It takes me out of that emotional state. It allows me to calm down and make better choices. I'll down a glass of water, and in a half hour, if I still feel like having that ice cream, I'll go have it. But if I don't, I realize it's just really about the emotions. And then I think about that choice, what that does to me 100 years from now. Then where does my health look like at age 65 and 100?
Way better.
Way better, because that choice took me one step closer to my goal. And so we teach this idea of stop, challenge, and choose. And now I have the choice to make. Do I choose the choice that's going to take me towards my goal, or am I going to choose the choice that's going to take me away from my goal? And it becomes very simple because you remove the emotions from the equation and the choice becomes very logical.
Yeah.
Right? And I'm a very logical person by nature. At least I try to be.
Well, I am a very emotional person by nature, and I'm saying that's not helping me. So I got to kind of change my ways a bit.
You do. And that's where you can get help. There are people out there that coach you. Growing up, you had teachers, right?
Yeah.
You had adults. You had your parents. You had coaches. You had everybody that will guide you through life. And so I think once we graduate college, we kind of lose sight of that. You know, I have several mentors in my life that help keep me on track. And it's okay to have those people because they guide you through life's decisions too.
Well, how do you find these mentors? If somebody was like, I want help, I don't know where to go, where to start, what do you recommend?
Well, you can always ask, obviously, and there's so many resources available, but I have people that are on what I call my board of directors that didn't even know it. They're just people that I trust and I look up to. And so when I need advice, I go to them. But there are professionals, obviously. And so do you like to read?
I do like to read.
What kind of books do you like to read?
I like to read fiction books and self-help books, I'd say.
Yeah, and there are a lot of resources there too. That kind of opened up my eyes too when I started reading a lot of those self-help books. And it brought me in front of a whole different community of people. Mm. And, you know, I go to seminars, I listen to the talk, and I meet people. And I have found that when I've been intentional about just surrounding myself by like-minded people, life is a lot better.
Very interesting.
And so the resources are out there. You'd be surprised. I mean, coworkers, friends, families, they will introduce you to all sorts of interesting people. And so we always advise, if you're the smartest person in the room, get out of that room.
Yeah.
Right?
I love that piece of advice.
So I got to get out of this room, right? Kidding.
No, I think that's great advice. And I think it's very fascinating when people think chiropractor, they don't really immediately think mind. They just think body. They're like, okay, how do we fix the body?
Correct.
You know, so it's fascinating that you're telling us, no, the mind has a lot to do with the body and it's intertwined.
Right. So as a chiropractor, what do you think about when you actually go see one? You think about neck pain, back pain, headaches. Yes. That's usually what brings most people when they come see us. I would tell you, my colleagues and I, growing up, we consider ourselves more holistic.
Okay, let's talk a little bit about that.
Right?
Holistic, what does that mean?
Well, when you go to the doctor, you know, they refer to you as that back pain patient or the diabetic patient or this or that, right? And so it's really about symptom-based. And so as a holistic approach to healthcare, as a chiropractor, we really look at the whole person as a whole, and that's the whole idea of holistic. I think the general idea is like it has something to do with some sort of natural remedies, but that's part of it because your body does have the ability to heal, and we tap into that. But we can do a lot of things to help with that. And so obviously when we adjust the spine, it helps people feel better. But what people don't realize, what's going on behind it, is that the neurology behind it. Everything going on at a neurological level that's really helping people with the brain. And that's where books like these are kind of amazing. It teaches about these sort of things because I'll tell you, I've been in practice for a long time and I've adjusted thousands of people over the years. And I can tell you how many times I walk into my office and I just want you to adjust me and I just want to feel better. And that's great. We can do that. But understand that's a very small snippet of what we do. You know, when we are actually adjusting the spine, we're really resetting the brain. And so I have this model here so you can see this. And this is the vertebrae of your spine. You know, the vertebrae have many joints on them, and they have the spinal cord coming down the middle and all these nerves that exit the spine. And the brain communicates through this brainstem down to the spinal cord, and it exits through all these nerves that go to the body. And so they go to your muscles, they go all the organs, all the tissues, and they control everything, most of everything, right? And so what happens is, like your brain right now, you have 5 different senses essentially, and it's taking in all this data all around you constantly, like from the light, from the sound, from the way things taste and touch and so forth, and it's gathering all this information, and what it's doing is just creating this 3D map in your brain of where you are in space, essentially, right? And so what happens is that stress can overload that. And so what it causes it causes some really abnormal motion in these joints. And when there's abnormal motion in these joints, it breaks off the communication between the brain and the rest of the body. And so all that information that's supposed to constantly be traveling up and down the spine into the tissues and back forward to the brain in an instant like that, they're not getting through it properly. So when we adjust the spine, we actually affect how the brain, the prefrontal cortex of the brain actually functions. You can actually see it on scans. But what we're doing is we're actually just resetting how things work. So for example, patient comes in, right? One of my patients has a neck ache. So they want me to adjust their spine. He said, what's going on? Well, in most simplest terms, it's a subluxation. This is where the spine is twisted. It compresses down on the spinal cord. So when that happens, things hurt. And so I relate it back to things like that are simple like this, like your cell phone. You ever have your cell phone signal be really poor in spots? Mm-hmm. What do you do with it?
Throw it at the wall.
Yeah, right? As a chiropractor, or most technicians tell you, just reboot it.
Yeah. Power
it down and turn it back on. That's kind of like what an adjustment does. So when I adjust the spine, I'm resetting that signal so that that information is going back and forth like it's supposed to. And in turn, the body heals better. So in time, people feel better. And so, when you get adjusted, if you feel that popping sensation in your neck, like that cracking noise, it feels good because it temporarily numbs the nerves in the spine, so it feels good then. But that's actually not the adjustment itself. The adjustment itself is actually the correction we're making to the nervous system. So in time, when the nervous system functions better, your body can heal injuries that actually caused the problems that you had in the first place, getting back down to the root of the problem. And on a more neurological and biomechanical issue, we can help with that. But on a holistic side of you, what causes that? Okay, so that's where we have to have the secondary question. So what's the number 1 and 2 killers in America?
Cancer.
And?
I don't know.
Heart disease.
Oh.
Did you know that they are very much preventable?
No, I did not know that.
We have this conversation about genetics a lot. And so people think that, I would say most people think that it's genetic when it comes to cancer and heart disease. We actually realize that it's actually preventable. It's environment. Environment. So 80% of it can be prevented through lifestyle changes. So person who suffers a heart attack, if they happen to survive, they go to the ER, the doctor treats them, and they feel better, go home, they end up doing the exact same thing, living the exact same lifestyle. What's going to happen?
Same results.
Same results, just later on. And when we're talking about heart disease, it's a very unlikely chance that they survive a second time. And so we understand as doctors that if we don't make changes to the lifestyle, we're not going to get the results we're looking for. And so we have to also address what's going on at home and in your lives that's causing you to show up in our offices with the neck ache or the heart attack, whatever condition you show up with when you see your physician. And we have to address that. And so what it is it's lifestyle.
What do you advise to people that don't necessarily want to change? Like, let's say I have a friend who is not living that right lifestyle or a better lifestyle, and they just can't seem to find the way. What do you recommend for those people?
Nothing.
Nothing.
Listen, the human brain is so powerful. If you don't want to get better, there's nothing I'm going to be able to do, your wife's going to be able to do to convince you otherwise. That's how powerful the brain is. If I have seen so many patients that showed in my office who just simply don't want to get better.
Why? What's the one thing that's stopping them?
It's usually trauma.
Trauma?
Mm-hmm. That they have not dealt with. When we talk about the importance of mental health in the brain, if you are not working on your own perspective, your mindset, and your brain and your mental health, it affects everything. And it affects your ability to heal. We see people who should be better, but they're not better because they're just not emotionally ready to do so. So when you have someone who doesn't want to make changes, there's nothing you can do for that. But the big difference is, though, if you have someone who does want to change, well, then we can do something. And so that question comes in, it's like, how do we approach this, right? These emotions again of ours. Right?
It's everything, I guess.
Everything. Listen, when it comes to getting better, I think most of us wait until we want to get better. Or I would say we have this desire to be better for ourselves. When the reality is, if you actually want to get better, it starts very simply with just making the decision to get better.
Okay.
We reverse the roles. See, everybody wants the outcome right away, but don't realize...
Instant gratification.
Correct. So you can't get the results without making the necessary changes, right? But you always can't tell like what you need to do. So in order to get where you want to be, you have to first just make the decision to do something. And I think it was Walt Disney said, just jump off the cliff and grow wings on the way down. You'll make more changes in your life by just doing something than doing nothing. Because if you do the same thing over and over, you're going to get the same results, right?
Yeah. So
what happens to start is simply making the decision to make changes. And it could be very simple things. Like I just want to start going for a walk every single day. Because once you start that walk every single day, you're going to create what we call a habit. Once you create that habit, it becomes part of who you are. And eventually, when it becomes a regular thing, we develop that desire to keep going and do more and get better with it. And so most of us struggle because we're waiting for that instant gratification. So we want that desire at the very beginning. When the reality is that comes later on down the road with healing.
When you say trauma, do you mean emotional trauma, physical trauma? Like what if someone's like, I don't even know why I'm eating this much or doing this bad habit. What trauma is it? You know?
Yeah.
Do you ever get that question?
All of the above. Stress and trauma comes in different forms. There's the emotional trauma. Like that's, I think, what most will think of when we say that word. There's also the physical trauma. If you get hit by a truck, that's a traumatic experience. But think about the emotional trauma behind that encounter too. There are other types of trauma, like chemical trauma too. Like the foods we eat, the medication we take, they cause stress throughout the nervous system too. So it's all the above. But I think the one that we struggle with the most is the emotional trauma behind things. Like, if I break an arm, that's going to heal up.
Yeah.
Right. And the bones will be stronger. But the one thing that we don't really manage very well is what's going up in here and in here.
Okay.
And we carry that with us through adulthood. So again, why is it so important to deal with your mental health? Because your mental health affects how you think. And how you choose to think will affect every decision you make. And every decision you make creates your habits, right?
So when you have a client that comes into your office, are you like, whoa, let's get into your mental health first. How do you guide the conversation?
I have to listen. It's kind of funny. We were just talking about this the other day. I've been doing it for so long. The most difficult part about being a physician in any form is that developing the communication skills. They call it bedside manners, right? But the reality is like communication skills are not about having the ability to talk. Really good communication skills are really about being able to read the room and having the ability to listen. And so you'll find that as a doctor, I do more listening than actual talking. And so I ask a lot of questions. And the reason why I ask a lot of questions is because I need some clarification because people don't communicate what they actually mean. They don't tell you what exactly is on their mind because they have a hard time expressing what's on their mind. So you have to ask clarification for clarifying questions, right? And as you listen, you kind of get an idea of what the patients need. And what we do is we meet them where we're at. Listen, not everybody that comes in to see me that wants to turn their whole life upside down and get healthier. That's just reality. Some people they want their backache gone, and that's it. And they want to be in and out, and they want to be done, and they don't want to talk about their diet. They don't want to talk about their mental health. They don't want to talk about their relationships. They don't want to do those things, and it's okay. I can't help those people with that. But if there's someone that actually wants to do those things, then we can actually make a big difference there.
So what is the most common thing that people come in for that you've noticed over the years?
Over the years? Neck pain, low back pain.
But
headaches.
Do you think it is associated immediately with trauma?
Yes, in some form. And it comes down to stress. Stress is the big one. So I talked about earlier how stress will overload your nervous system, right? That's what primarily we deal with as chiropractors. We deal with stress in some form. So when it overloads the nervous system, we get those misalignments in our spine that chiropractors call subluxations. And so as a chiropractor, we correct those subluxations so people heal and feel better.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, Dr. C, I am so fascinated with this conversation. I feel like I learned so much. We are wrapping up on time, but I do have one last question for you.
Yes.
And I ask this every guest, if you could talk to your younger self, what would you tell him?
Oh my gosh. Slow down. Slow down and forgive yourself. I think we grow up with this idea that we have to be so perfect, but we are not perfect in any way, shape, or form. And it's okay to give ourselves grace because I think that most of us growing up, we don't give ourselves the grace that we actually deserve because you don't expect anybody else to be perfect, do you?
Nope.
I don't either. So why do I expect that of myself?
Wow, Dr. C. I'm going to come out of here a changed woman. Thank you so much for taking the time out of your day, sitting with us, and teaching us all these cool things. I really appreciate your time.
Absolutely. I'm glad to be here. Thank you.
Of course.